Today we're talking about My Brilliant Friend Season 3, Episode 5, Terror. And this was a great episode. And I appreciate all the comments below because I haven't read the books. And so I've been watching these discussions called Our Brilliant Friend. And that's helped contextualize a lot of things. And that context has been pivotal for me in this episode. So the first thing I enjoyed is the politics. And this conversation between Pietro and Pasquale illustrates many things. First, how small Italy is. And second, how tense the political situation was during this time in Italy. Like, you have two communists here, but they have totally different outlooks for the future. And the way they were able to illustrate this in this small apartment was just like chef's kiss. Also, the line between fantasy and reality. It seems like the idea that Elena has of Lila, like the gap between what she thinks Lila is and the reality of Lila, is getting bigger, right? And Elena was quite frustrating throughout this episode, especially towards the end of the episode. Like that ending, whoo, I was like, so you're not gonna kill this kid? Like like, you guys let me know what you think, but I was just not having it. And again, there's a difference between finding yourself and then losing yourself. So the episode starts off, and I like the contrast between Naples and Florence. So Naples is like this dead city, it seems, like this dead place. There's no color, there's no life. And now there's like terrorist attacks. You know, it was all quiet on the Western Front, and then people start dying, buildings start blowing up, and it seems like the communists are fighting back. So up until this point, the fascists were attacking. They were the ones really, you know, terrorizing people. But the communists are striking back. And then you have this scene in Florence where you have marches, demonstration, there's color, there's life. And this is where we meet Elena. And Elena's wardrobe is changing, right? She's getting, I don't know, like there's more, it's more form-fitting, we'll say, like it's a lot sexier. And she's at this women's liberation movement. And the whole point of this movement is to find safe spaces for women. And that's what Elena struggles with. Like, she has no place to go. And so towards the end of the demonstration, she's sick. And I suspect it's because she's pregnant, right? And then she gets home and we find out a few things. First, there's this tension between her and her husband. And it seems like Elena has not been able to write anything. And a lot of the books that she's reading are like feminist books. They're books about sexuality. Like, we're getting glimpses into, you know, what's been going on in her head. And it seems like she's looking for inspiration, but she's frustrated that she can't really find it. And she's very kind of combative with her husband, right? Like, she calls him boring. She calls him like, don't tell me what to do, right? So we're seeing a new Elena, a very assertive one, and one that we haven't seen, right? Like, so she's getting increasingly like, she's not passive anymore. She's not this passive character letting things happen around her. And so the trouble begins when she gets a phone call from Carmela informing her of the violence in Naples. And specifically the fact that Pasquale has been asking about her, specifically her address and where she lives and her phone number. And this kind of freaks her out, right? Because Pasquale is not someone she wants to see anytime soon. And so she calls Lila, and I hate that she can't be direct with her, you know, like rather than just ask Lila, like, hey, did you tell this man where I live? And that's the thing, how did Pasquale find out where she lives? Did I miss that part? You guys let me know. But during that conversation, Lila asks Elena to take her son for a time, right? She wants her son out of the neighborhood for a bit, and she doesn't tell her why. And she should have said no, right? Because again, Elena cannot tell Lila no. And this was kind of, you know, her undoing towards the end. And so she hangs up the phone and she's kind of nervous, right? And all her nerves come to life when Pasquale knocks on the door. This conversation between Pasquale, Nadia, and Pietro is just like unreal, all right? Talk about showing and not telling. So as soon as we see Pasquale, like, there are problems, right? He looks disheveled. She looks like she hasn't showered. They look tired. And as if you let him into the apartment, you know, like this whole scene, like one wrong move and someone was gonna die. And so she lets him in. And again, Pietro has no idea that this man is on the run, right? So throughout this scene, you know, you're getting snippets, like there's roadblocks, there's things happening in the city. And again, I'm assuming that he's on the run, like the police want to talk to him. And so he gets into her apartment. They make themselves at home in the worst way possible, right? Like they're just kicking it. They're disrespectful. And it was just like, I would have told these people to leave. And this scene was brilliant for a lot of reasons. First, it shows you how small Italy is, because in terms of like these differing sort of political ideas, because Pietro and Pasquale, they're both communists, but they just have totally different outlooks, right? They're just on two different planets. And so the first thing the scene was really good at is like, what is a communist, right? What does it mean to be a communist? And Pasquale has some ideas. And so throughout the scene, Pasquale is like the active one. You know, he's very like in Pietro's face. He's walking around this apartment. He's like, oh, so you live here? You know, like this is your place? What kind of people live here? You know, architects, lawyers, like what kind of people? And Pietro throughout is just like one move away from killing someone, right? He's like, no, everybody here works. And that's the thing about Pietro, right? Like he's an academic, and an academic is privilege. Like to be an academic at this time, you had to be privileged. Like this is not a position you can work towards. Like you can work hard and make money, but you cannot work hard and be in this position. Like he is the embodiment of class. And that was kind of Pasquale's point. Like, so tell me again about how hard you work. And I'm not gonna lie, like I was kind of standing Pasquale. I was like, where's the lie? You know, where's the lie? And Elena, you could tell she was in the background, like she hated that he was saying this stuff, but she kind of agreed with him a bit. And in one scene, Pasquale takes Pietro's hands and he's like, listen, look at your hands and look at my hands. You know, like without me, like nothing would exist. You know, like I'm the reason you're sitting in this chair right now. And the way Pietro tries to humble himself, you know, like, oh, we're renting. And correct me if I'm wrong, like I don't think they're renting. I think the place belongs to Pietro's mother. Like it's a family, like they own the place. Like this whole thing, like we're renting, like it's not all ours. I was like, sir, I don't believe you at all. And Pasquale's like, I'm not a dummy. And so Pasquale's whole thing is, again, he's a man of action. Like people like Pietro, the working class is a theoretical exercise. Like they feel bad, but what are you gonna do about it? You know, in Elena's words, Pietro has never slapped somebody and he's never been slapped. And it seemed like he needed to get slapped, you know? So people like Pietro are very passive, you know, like they're not men of action. Where someone like Pasquale is like, I'm gonna do it. Like you guys, you talk, but I'm the one doing it. You know, I'm the person in the shoes. I'm the one who's actually making a change. And that's the thing about change, like, it's not a passive thing, right? Like you have to be aggressive, and a system that's so like deeply embedded in class, sadly only violence can really end it, right? Like that's Pasquale's point. Like you've never been in my shoes. Who the hell are you to say anything? And Pietro's like, I guess no one. And you know, watching Pietro and Pasquale, like again, Pasquale and Elena, they come from the same place, you know, so they know how hard it is to make it to this type of place. Right, and they can have a kind of utopian view of the world. Like Pasquale was really going in on Pietro, saying, people like you, like you're gonna go down one day. Like he has a very specific view of the future that is very unrealistic, right? Like the things he wants, sadly, you know, they're not gonna happen. But that's not gonna stop him from trying, right? Like there's a difference between feeling one way, which is Pietro, and being a man of action, like actually taking action and doing what you can to at least make some headway. And it's debatable, but this is what I got out of it. And so during this conversation, we find out what Nadia thinks of Elena, which is that she doesn't think much of her. And in my opinion, Nadia is the worst, right? Here she is, like, there's a difference between having imposter syndrome and just being a straight up failure. And that's Nadia. Like Nadia is someone I have no sympathy for. You know, you had all the resources in the world and this is how you turned out. Like that's on you. Nobody else can be blamed for that. And then she goes off about the struggles of her privilege while she's sitting next to Pasquale. I was like, the irony, like you really don't see yourself. And there's really nothing in Nadia's head, right? And a lot of her resentment towards Elena is because that should have been her life, right? That should have been her life. And she doesn't want to admit to any type of jealousy, but she's definitely jealous. And so Elena surprisingly doesn't push back. And the reason she doesn't argue with anyone is because, as she says in the narration, although she felt Pasquale was more or less trying to respect her, I don't know where she saw that, Nadia hates her. You know, like she felt like there was no love from Nadia. So a lot of what Pasquale was saying, Elena could relate to, which is maybe why she was like more forgiving, whereas Nadia was just coming off as a bitter queen, a bitter human being. And so the reason Elena kind of keeps this neutrality is because she doesn't want anyone to kill each other. And so before Pasquale leaves, he plays this like old song, as if to say, Elena, like, don't forget who you are. And of course he doesn't leave without going in on Pietro first. And he goes in on him. He's like, your kind is dead. You don't belong here. You don't even go here. Like, and he just leaves. And Pietro is pissed. Like the aftermath of this was devastating, right? And Pietro compares Pasquale to a fascist, which I think is interesting because, again, Pietro is performative, right? He's not real. Like, as Elena says, right? Like, everything's been handed to you. You're so privileged that you don't even see your privilege, right? The idea that you're working or you're not doing anything, you know? And again, it's very performative. So the fact that he sees someone like Pasquale as a fascist, someone who, like Pasquale, for better or worse, like he's been through it. And so, you know, it just shows you the differing opinions, right? It's like, you got sympathy for the working class until they step out of line, until they say something they're not supposed to say. But I don't know, like I heard no lies in what Pasquale was saying. I had no issues. Like, I don't like Pasquale, but he was spitting facts, you know, like without him, there would be no infrastructure, right? Without these guys that you spit on, you feel sorry for, like the world as we know it would not exist today. And so Pietro's pissed, he slaps her. And again, he's not a man who's been slapped or has been slapped, which speaks to the fact that it really takes a lot for that guy to do anything, because it's not in his DNA. Like he's not a guy that has to react. So why would he? And so the aftermath of this is horrible. And I like, again, how they play with fantasy in terms of getting us in Elena's head. So she's cleaning the bathroom, and the bathroom was filthy, by the way. I was like, what did you do in here? And she's imagining them like doing it in the shower, Nadia and Pasquale. And I was just like, nobody needed to see that. But again, like I like how they kind of get us inside her head. You know, it's like, why are you imagining them together? And so I think Elena thought this would be the worst of it. And then things get worse when Enzo brings Lila's son over. So earlier in the episode, Elena agrees to take Lila's son. And this was a decision that she would regret. First, she only was supposed to take him if Lila was sick or unable to take care of him. And neither was true. Enzo comes over, he's doing well, he stays the night. And again, like, he fits in, right? And I love this impulse Elena has to humble herself, because Enzo's first reaction was, is this yours? And she's like, no, we're renting. It's like, you're obviously not renting. And so Enzo's there, they're dropping off the kid, and Elena's frustrated because she wants to know the truth. You know, like, I'll be happy to do you favors, but, you know, I'm not, like, you gotta tell me what's up. And by force, she got the information from Enzo. Like, Enzo did not want to tell her anything, but he told her. So we find out the truth by force. And again, it's a bit annoying that Elena has to like hustle for the truth. So it seems that Lila is very concerned for her son, specifically because there are things that her son is not telling her, right? So Michael, ever since she's been back in the neighborhood, Michael has been trying to get her, right? So we found out that Michael is in love with Lila. He will forever be in love with Lila. He's been trying to get Lila to work for him. You know, he wants to partner with Lila. And he tells her to her face, like, I'm not gonna stop. And it seems like he's built some type of relationship with Lila's son to a point where Lila suspects that her son is in touch with Michael, or he has some sort of outside connections, that like he's not being 100% truthful with his mother. And as hard as Lila tries to kind of push her son to tell her the truth, it seems like he just doesn't want to tell her anything. And so for this reason, she wants her son out of the neighborhood, right? Like, there's something she's not seeing, and she needs to sort herself out. So there's a lot going on in the neighborhood. And you know, listen, like when she first moved in, like the apartment has changed quite a bit. Like she's at home, but the problem is, you know, I can imagine that for her son, this is a difficult place because her mother has a reputation, and I'm sure her son, like maybe they'll unpack that in future episodes, but I wonder that's that's affecting, you know, how he sees his mother, if he's hiding secrets from her. Like there is that kind of implication. But there was this scene where she's interrogating her son and he just sits there like straight faced, and Enzo literally has to like pull her off. So this sort of chaos is why, you know, Lila asked Elena to do this. So Elena calls Lila, trying to get the information out of her, and Lila, being Lila, hangs up the phone. And so there's a lot going on with Lila, right? So her relationship with Enzo is great, but she's still married to Stefano. And not only that, like she's making an income, but she has an opportunity to make even more money and potentially become independent. And I'm not sure how she's going to weigh those two things out, but whatever the case, this is not information that she wants to share with Elena at all. And so out of frustration, Elena doesn't know what to do, and so they go to the beach. And so, you know, watching this beach scene is really interesting because talk about moving on up, right? Now they take beach vacations. What did she say? They have a number one spot, like their spot on the beach is like excellent, right? They have their name. So in terms of Elena's lifestyle, it's like amazing, right? And she's acknowledged it. And she feels some guilt about it, but at the same time, she's just like, yeah, so we have a beach house. Like her life has just improved exponentially. And this beach scene was chaotic, right? And the way it ended was even more chaotic. So during this beach scene, she's with her family, and her husband tells her that Bruno is dead. So the factory worker is dead. And I like these, how they show us and they don't tell us. So he was shot, and from what it looks like, it was Pasquale who did it. Like that was the energy I was getting. So the communist shot Bruno. And if this is true, Pasquale is a vigilante, right? Like he's going around and he's the one causing these explosions. He's the one killing all these people. I couldn't see behind the mask, but it looked like Pasquale and Nadia. And so things are getting very violent there. And the violence there compared to this beach, right? Like how nice it is, how chill it is, how safe it is, you know? And that's the thing, privilege, money, it buys you safety. Like I think the thing that most people underestimate is safety and security. And that's the one thing money can buy. And so she's safe here, but in the neighborhood, I mean, it's just absolute chaos. And so she calls Lila, and I don't know what Lila was working on in the dark, or like whatever she was doing. Like maybe she was working on IBM stuff, maybe she wasn't, like, whatever the case, she didn't want to be honest. And I thought it was interesting that Lila said, oh, I didn't know about Bruno. Like, of course she knew about Bruno. Like, that was a lie. So again, it's like, why are you lying? And again, Elena is so desperate for Lila to tell her something. And again, comparison is the enemy. And so she hangs up the phone with Lila, and this last scene, whew. So this kid, like there was something off about this kid the minute I saw him, but I'm like, maybe he's just a kid, you know? And Elena, since the kid arrived, like she was kind of tense with him in the few scenes that we saw. And as soon as she couldn't spot her daughter with Lila's son, she was like, oh shit. And her reaction, like if you're that worried, there's a problem. And so she's looking, and then finally she spots Lila's son, you know, near assaulting her daughter. That's what I got out of it. And I thought she was gonna kill him. I would have killed that kid. You know, imagine her husband saw, he would have 100% killed him. And that's the thing, like, watching this episode throughout, like, at first you could tell Elena didn't know what to do. She grabs her kids, you know, and she sits them down. And her daughter says, just before the episode closes, like, you're very mean, mother. And then all of a sudden, like, Elena turns around and she sees Bruno, you know, like waving at her as if to say, your past will come back to haunt you. Like, that's what I got out of it. But that final scene, like, that took me for a loop. And, you know, as she was looking for her daughter, I knew something bad was going to happen. And so that's how the episode ends. So I was very frustrated with Elena. Also, I think it's really interesting that Elena and Pietro, like, Pietro knows nothing about the old neighborhood. Like, that's my understanding. Like, he doesn't know much. And Elena doesn't tell him much. And so this is important. Like, there's kind of information missing. But I would have, Elena's reaction and and that's the thing, like, that final scene, like, he was really trying to get this little girl to do something. And I just took it like I would have killed this kid. Like, I'm sorry, but you guys let me know what you're thinking until next time.